And good morning, Rob Browne. I
We
see
are
you're
ready.
on your phone. We're
Yeah.
We're live, baby.
We are live.
Live
We
right
are
now.
looking live at the SEC sidelines on a Friday morning, 2 days after Christmas. I think most people are still in that Christmas mode.
I think you're still in that Christmas mode,
Well,
Brown.
and people are eating. God Almighty, man! It's just an eat fest. It's an eat fest. You just go from one party to another, eating all this food, and you're going, I can't have cake for 3 or 4 times a day. We're all going to be riding on scooters. It's tough. But Brendan, man, you watch these bowl games now, it is different with the playoff like it is. And I guess as we get bigger and the playoff grows to 16, 24, and 32, we're just going to start having the bowl games will just be the playoff games. That's what I'm going to guess. Is that where you see it going? I'd see it like that.
They're going to have to use some sort of structure. They're going to have to use some sort of existing model to get it to, I don't know, to make a difference as far as, you can't reinvent the entire wheel. I guess you could, but I think they'll use some of the bowl games and just convert them over because you're going to have corporate sponsorship already sitting there, and it seems to make the most sense.
Yeah,
but, your guess is as good as mine after this year.
Well, it's strange. We're going to have Jake Wimberly, ESPN 105.9, the afternoon drive in Jackson, Mississippi, will join us. And I like his takes. Doug Dean will check in. Frank Duffy out today. He's driving to New Orleans. Ken Capps out today. Kind of the Christmas holidays and New Year's schedule. But we're going to be delivering a lot of good news. So when those guys come on in here, we'll be ready to talk. I think Jake has Oregon winning the national championship. Last year, he had Michigan. I have Georgia playing Oregon for the national championship. And what we've learned from these first 4 playoff games is there are a lot of teams in the playoffs that really have no business being there. But because of the way that the playoff committee designed this to try to be inclusive of different conferences and other parts of the country, that's where we are. And Brendan, I'm Alabama, South Carolina, Ole Miss. How would they do compared to SMU, Indiana, and other teams that? Well, Clemson was good. Clemson was a good matchup, but Boise, I mean, they're not. They're just not built like these SEC schools are. And Texas, by hiring Sarkisian in 21, this is his 4th year, they were ready for the final exam, which was the first game in the SEC. They proved it last year by beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa. But
I mean, look, there's a million topics there, but the whole notion of this playoff and everything else is that we get away from saying, well, this team's no good, that team's no good. We don't know this, that. There's too much. It's almost like a legal thing. It's like it's too much hearsay, right?
Yeah.
Shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and injuries. And if this player played and that quarterback wasn't hurt, and this, look, at the end of the day, we just need a clear cut winner. We need black and white here, and that's what we're all sort of looking at. Is that what's the definition of a national championship in college football? We have a playoff system. That playoff system obviously needs to expand. We need to do this, in baby steps. But in that process of doing this, we're going to have to give props to the Boise States and Indianas and these other teams, because that is the spirit of the tournament. Like, think about, I mean, we talk about it, how basketball is the model, right? Like that the tournament at the dance at the end of the year is the model that we all love so much about the end, about watching the NCAA basketball tournament. Well, we love it because we watch Cinderella dance sometimes, right?
Yeah,
we love it because and so we got to give Cinderella a chance to dance. Otherwise, we're just being old codgers.
Well, I agree from that perspective, but if you want the 12 best teams, there's other ways to do it. And I'm just saying, looking at what we're seeing in the playoffs this year, Uh, Boise State is a good team, and they've had their moments in the past in a bowl game or two, one game, but they got it doing it for 8 conference games or 12 straight weeks of a tougher schedule. That's more proof that you really are a solid program. Now, everybody will talk about in basketball, St. Peter's a couple of years ago, their coach was making maybe $200,000 a year. Kentucky had 8 basketball players on their team making over $200,000 a year just in NIL, and and plus add in the scholarship and all those benefits. That's a big deal. The interest, though, everywhere you go, everybody's talking about the college football playoff, and it is Christmas. Everybody's just running a few minutes behind. I was worried that Jake didn't get the link. I was going, oh no, because I jumped on a link this morning from a podcast I did with William.
Jake, let's not get started about the links conversation in the morning with Robert. Okay,
that's my fault.
Rob's like, I was on a link last night. I was on a link, and now I was on. I'm not. I'm in the studio. I said, Rob, no, you're on like a whole nother software, and I think you're on like another podcast right now.
I was area51.com. Jake, Merry Christmas. Doug Dean will be joining us here in just a minute. What's the takeaway so far? You watch these playoff games, bowl games, and all. In your opinion, are the bowl games just all going to be future playoff sites?
Yeah, and good morning. Belated Merry Christmas. And you're right, everybody's kind of moving a little sluggish this morning. Sorry about that. The weather here in central Mississippi has been crazy as far as rain, but we do need it. Yeah, I think some of these sites will definitely become, college football playoff sites. Now, what will be interesting to see is because, you've got the money. There's 2 sides to this coin, right? You got the money that's tied to the bowl games, but then you've got, what looks to be after the first weekend, regardless of the way the playoff games went, the home atmospheres were unbelievable. And there's a call of, hey, maybe this ought to be like the National Football League, where we have playoff games at home sites until the national championship game. But I think overall, Robin, we know this money wins out over passion and what we love. And, the bowl games will continue to be tied to these, to the college football playoff. There's no doubt.
Well, Doug Dean, you're down there in the Black Belt on the Cahaba River. Deer, get ready. The big guy is out there. Hey, Doug, by the way, I got a pin from my friend Mary. This is looks like a 7 mag shell. I mean, it's
nice.
It's a rifle. It's a rifle pin. But hey, let's talk about these playoff games. You just did it, Jake. Everywhere you go, the Christmas party circuit, everybody's talking about it. But I will say this. Yesterday, we were at the Bass Pro down there, Pyramid, and I saw a bunch of the Texas Tech players in town for the Liberty Bowl. There were 4 of them. And I said something about the transfer portal. I said, have any of y'all ever entered it? And they just shook their head and said, no, it's insane. So I hope that more guys will. I said, y'all been in Lubbock the entire time. He said, absolutely. And they're majoring in some serious majors. So there's hope, guys. Doug, your thoughts where we are?
To me, it's the best of times and the worst of times, the tale of 2 cities, right?
Yep.
It's a new year. I choose to be grateful and appreciative, at least until, next November when we see the year release 2.0 travesty as we interpret it on the playoff selection committee. But until then, the positivity I feel is, we had some blowout games in the first round, but it's almost as if, Rob, it's Jake, correct?
Yeah, Jake, from Jackson, Mississippi.
Good to see you, Jake.
You too.
So it's almost as if people have a short memory, the recentness phenomenon. We've had blowout games in the round 1, as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And I'm with Greg McElroy, who went on a rant that I tend to agree with it. You cannot extrapolate from Tennessee not showing up, and it was at an Ohio State home game, and despite the Vols bringing an unbelievable 40,000 or so fans, you can't extrapolate from that what the SEC's power is. You got to play the top 2 or 3 most powerful teams against other conferences and see what there can be interpreted from that. But we've got great, compelling compelling games. Even today, I know I'm pimping Birmingham a little bit, I guess, but I look forward to seeing Georgia Tech. They had a really nice year against Vandy, and those are two programs that have been a little downtrodden and are surging now and trying to be relevant. And I think they succeeded in being relevant. So I'm anxious to see if the Fighting Pavias can hang with a good Georgia Tech team, and Auburn fans in particular. I don't know if the kid's playing or not, but Eric Singleton Jr., the wide receiver that is coming to Auburn through the portal. Wouldn't you guess he would sit that one out, or will he go ahead and play with his teammates, Rob?
He's probably counting his money. I doubt he'll play.
There you go.
God.
But man, I look Arkansas, Texas Tech, and then tonight in the Vegas Bowl, Texas A&M and USC. It's not. You wouldn't clear your calendar and throw a big party for that particular game, but it's quality football until we can get to New Year's Eve, Boise and Penn State, and then on January 1, while you're tending the greens and black-eyed peas, Rob, and ham hocks, unless you want to have an unlucky year. We'll have some good Arizona State. I'm telling you, don't write them off against I love the Longhorns. That's my team to win it all. Yeah, but I do think that Arizona State, I don't see a blowout coming in that one. I don't see a blowout in any of the other games either. Georgia Notre Dame will probably captivate my attention the most, because it'll be a question of, is Notre Dame really taking the next big step to play serious football in the trenches, especially?
All right, I'm going to throw this question out for you. You brought up some great points. Jake and Doug and everybody watching, if you want to comment, for the average, and I've got a friend that's maintaining this, and I brought it up earlier this week, the average LSU fan in the state of Louisiana who's Catholic, and there's a lot of them, they're going to pull, he says, for Notre Dame over Georgia and the SEC. And I said, I don't agree with that. Now, I've surveyed some of the guys we have on the show, like Jimmy Ott from Baton Rouge, also Jacques Doucet down there in Baton Rouge, Channel 9, and just different LSU fans. Jimmy says New Orleans, yes. Baton Rouge, no. But SEC pride is on the line. We only got 3 teams in the league this year. Jake, what do you think the crowd will be like when Georgia and Notre Dame tee it off in the Sugar Bowl? We've all been to a lot of Sugar Bowls, but I have not been there when Notre Dame is playing.
It's going to be interesting because Notre Dame's kind of like the Dallas Cowboys or the Yankees, right? You either love them or you hate them. I mean, they're a national brand. They're a team that, again, like you said, I mean, the Catholic population, typically they're going to pull for them. And then, you take my audience here in Jackson. I mean, you can bring up Notre Dame and you're going to get, split down the middle, people that can't stand them right here in central Mississippi, people that love them. I would, and I tend to believe that this SEC pride stuff kind of splits too, because some people, it's all about the SEC. But then you ask Alabama fans, if it ain't Roll Tide, it ain't nobody. Who cares? So, I think that you're going to see it split down the middle. I'm fascinated about this matchup. I'm with Doug. It's going to be interesting to see if Notre Dame can, survive in the trenches. I'll say this. They've got as good a shot, with Carson Beck, I think, being out
good point.
Is that they would have had probably in 25 years. Because typically, what's the rub on Notre Dame? All Notre Dame's in the playoff, they're going to get blown out. Well, they've got an opportunity, and it'll be a big one. And I think the watching populace will be split down the lines on who's pulling for them and who's not.
Rob, your question is, I'm not going to rant on it. I don't think it's that emotional a question. This whole notion of who are you going to pull for? Do you pull for the SEC? And I guess some people, it's almost like they walk through life looking for a reason to get pissed off about something. Yeah. And, I think that the answer to your question, it's a fun question, is as diverse as the people watching the show. And so I don't fault my brother and sister SEC fans, whoever they pull for, if for a particular game, they just kind of will enjoy Notre Dame beating Georgia, or some will say it helps the SEC if we look strong and powerful, and that's probably accurate. But I don't think the SEC's brand or influence and dominance and power on the big decisions is going away no matter what. So as for me, the reason I'll be pulling for Notre Dame, I'm a cradle Catholic, but I also happen to go to college in Indiana, where I had the privilege of going to South Bend for game day about 12 times.
Wow.
So there's a little bit of a fondness there.
Yeah.
I also think it would be good. I don't wish Georgia to lose, and it doesn't bother me if they go out and I so admire what Kirby Smart does at Georgia. To me, he's the dean of SEC football with Saban retiring, and we'll see if Sarkisian or someone can challenge that. But I just think if Georgia wins it all, I'll admire that. I'll tip my hat to them. But I think it'd be great for college football if we get some of these historically powerful big brands like that iconic Notre Dame logo playing real serious football. And then I think some Auburn fans would tell you, if you want me to feel romantic about pulling for the SEC, where were you, SEC fans, in 2010 when all this energy was spent trying to get Cam sidelined due to eligibility and then pulling for anybody but Auburn? And, people come wearing duck uniforms the week of the big game. Yeah. So it doesn't bother me. And this whole notion of pulling, is there some kinetic force I'm unaware of, Rob, that when you pull for a team, it actually has an impact? Of course it does.
Yes, of course. Hey, Doug, real quick before I go back to Jake, and I like what Jeff Boone, my good friend, says. All my Tiger friends will be pulling for the Dogs. I am pulling for Georgia because I love the SEC. But I was watching Paul Feinbaum's show yesterday. Doug, being a cradle Catholic, and I'm a convert, but Archbishop Marino, is he Archbishop now? Or is Doug, is he an Archbishop or a Cardinal now?
Yeah, Archbishop Marino. As a matter of fact, funny you'd bring that up, and I won't make this like the Catholic hour on Memphis, but I'm going to Italy, Amalfi Coast, next July for a friend's destination wedding.
Yeah. And
the celebrant, Rob, is going to be none other than Archbishop Joe Marino, so that will be cool.
Well, he was on Paul Feinbaum yesterday, and just the allure, and he's an Auburn fan, and he talked about, Paul Feinbaum said, your dad would be doing backflips right now with the frustration of what Auburn is. But it is a powerful allure of the Catholic Church when priests talk about it.
He is not only an Auburn fan, and he'll tell you got to be careful about how you talk about that when you're a man of the cloth, because you're there to save souls no matter who they pull for. But I was in a smallish group of Catholics, some non-Catholics in 1983 when we visited Italy and got to meet Pope John Paul II. And that week, it was in the fall, and we were there 2 weeks, and Ray Perkins led his Alabama team to not one but 2 losses, and we were following that at 3 a.m. Oh. And I won't lie, Archbishop Marino was a little bit giddy that Alabama was not faring well.
Yeah, I can imagine. All right, Jake, looking now at college football this season, where we are as of Friday, December 27th. How do you grade this season up to this point? A, B, C, D, or F minus?
Well, I think it depends on what you're grading, right? I mean, if you're talking about excitement and keeping you on your edge of your seat every week, I mean, just look what we've done. Rob, we've talked about this over the course of the weeks we visited here and on my show, is every week has been intriguing. Every week seems to have mattered, be it Ole Miss, South Carolina, Alabama, the SEC. You get over Colorado mattered at some point. SMU mattered. Miami mattered at some point. Right. So I think if we're grading it on that, I think it's an A+. There's the other side of the coin, which obviously we're going to, as a collective, have to address, the transfer portal and things of that nature. If you talk about negative publicity for the sport, you could give it a D-. So it just depends on what you're looking at and what we're trying to grade. But I would say as far as excitement and, TV viewership is off the chain. You look at the numbers via Nielsen. Those things are massive. We're going to have massive ratings numbers coming up for the New Year Eve and New Year game. So I think it depends on what we're looking at. But as far as the sport, I'd grade it at A+.
Doug.
And let me bolt on to that. I agree with everything Jake said. He's great. Man, did you take a smart pill this morning, Jake?
Just coffee.
The Leonard's loser.
Civil engineer, by the way. That's what his degree is in. So he's very methodical.
Yeah, I can tell he's one of these minds that sees the not just this right in front of you, but the architecture of all things in front that are happening. But if you make me label or subtitle the 2024 season, And I think this has been talked about some, but in my opinion, not to the degree that, because we almost have a duty to help fans adjust their expectations, if only for their emotional well-being. I would label 2024 the death of the dynasty. You like alliteration, Rob?
Yes.
That's not. I realize that's not music to my crimson and white friends' ears, but I've got good Bama friends. Some will be in my hunting club this weekend, and they themselves I think are doing an admirable job, which is not easy when you've won that many championships in that short a period of time under Saban. But they are saying, look, I get it. The realistic goal is not to be a dynasty, as in win 3 or 4 titles out of 7 or 8 years. The realistic goal is to try to make the playoff every single year. You might miss a year or two because you only need one blemish, and then you're putting it in the hands of a bunch of old dudes around a table in a smoke-filled room. That we will not have dynasties anymore, and the reason is the exact reason I think Saban rode off into the sunset. Actually, he's not in the sunset. He's on TV a lot, and he's fun. He's very good at what he does. I think that you can no longer sign a bunch of several top 5 classes together and expect for those freshmen to be developed and contributing in 2 or 3 years. They're gone. If they're a 4 or 5 star and they're not seeing the field by their sophomore year, certainly some of them their freshman year, it's see you later. So the age of the mercenary player, because of money, is gradually or rapidly replacing the era of 2 or 3 teams vying to be a dynasty.
Yeah, and I think that the NFL, everybody remembers 2007 when the Patriots were 17-0. They played a 9-7 Giants team that was a wild card that got hot in the playoffs. That's where we're going. You're going to see, as the playoffs get bigger, you'll see 9-3 teams in there. As they get even bigger, you'll see 8-4. That's where we're going. So if we've done anything, we've put the seed of hope in every program if they can raise money. Because you look at a guy that used to be, as Doug referenced, a 2nd or 3rd team guy at Alabama or Georgia or Auburn, he's now starting at Indiana, or he's starting at Boise, or he's starting at SMU. And that's just where we are. Everything has changed. I think this is the biggest shift, seismic shift in college football since we switched the substitution rules in the late 60s, platoon football and all that. And that damn near drove Coach Bryant out of coaching. We're all old enough to remember there were a lot of people in the late 60s. Alabama had 3 seasons where they lost like 5 games. The games passed him by. Well, they didn't know that he met with Darrell Royal and Emory Bellard and those guys out in Texas and put the wishbone in. And the 70s were pretty good to Alabama. I just think great coaches, great business leaders, they improvise, adapt, and overcome, Jake.
No, they do. They do. And you look at some of the coaches that take a lot of criticism for this but they're doing a great job. Lane Kiffin has done a great job with the transfer portal. Obviously, they missed some marks this year. Excuse me, with Kentucky and the game against LSU and Florida. But you look at what Billy Napier's been able to do. You look at Texas. You look at Oregon. You look at Ohio State. A lot of these coaches are doing a great job. Some of the others, not so much. That's why they're getting out of this. It depends on, I think, as a coach, do you want to deal with this chaos or not? And, I mean, look, you can turn a program quickly. Look right here what Charles Huff is doing at Southern Miss. I mean, very, very quickly, he has the top-rated recruiting class and transfer portal class in the Sun Belt. Now, a lot of that's coming from Marshall, but very similar to Cignetti at Indiana, what he did last year. But this will continue to evolve. Where we're at today is not where we'll be in 5 years. Yeah. There will be, I think, some rules and implementations put in place to kind of slow some of this down. It's never going away, but man, it is chaotic today. And some of these coaches, they do very well with it.
Yeah. I just wonder, and I'm going to, in the heading into the new year, Rob, I'm going to take it upon myself to do deep research and talk to some lawyers and people that understand NCAA college football, especially. Basketball is a little different animal, because if you get 5 or 10 million a year for your basketball team, you can do a lot. And some of those kids, it seems like they can test themselves in the draft, and not, you may hear ambient noise of a rifle being sighted in the background.
That's okay.
It's
the South.
It's authenticity on sidelines.live.
That's right.
So I just think it's an outrageous disparity in, if I may call it, salary cap in college football. Right? Mm-hmm. Perfectly legal, but when you've got Phil Knight and he can rip out from under, let's say Ohio State, Naeem Offord, and because he's going to be able to woo the kid with a custom designed shoe that Nike will create on top of the big 7 figures that a 5-star safety like that's getting, then we have to start asking ourselves, would you want to watch NFL with no salary cap, and the team that had the most, big spending owner could buy the best talent year? Now, they'll be wrong about the talent sometimes, but in free agency, he can go get proven talent. And I don't know if it's SCOTUS or most likely Congress giving an antitrust exemption to college football and basketball, that when we get to that point, this is going to really get fun, because instead of 3 or 4 teams that are there year in, year out, you may have variation, as many as 15 or 20 teams that they kind of swap. They take turns. Who is going to emerge with some elite quarterback that year to make noise? And I did want to footnote, as the year wraps up, another deserving footnote for this year is the proof of concept on Deion Sanders being able to coach. The book is in on that. I think he deserves credit. They won some big games this year. Wasn't perfect. He put a Heisman Trophy in the trophy case in Colorado. And so I think, he would not be a fit at Auburn or some schools, perhaps. That's my opinion. Yeah. But he is a head coach that will change how coaching works and what you do to attract these kids beyond just the NIL money.
I agree. And Jake, look, great line in that Willie Nelson song. Pull off your coat, throw it in the corner, stay all night, stay a little longer, stay as long as you can with us. It's kind of a laid-back Friday with us, and appreciate everybody joining us this morning and watching. That interesting thing, and Doug just said it, with Deion Sanders. I think I've always said Nick Saban's not going to partner with someone he doesn't respect. I don't think he would. And Deion will drive you crazy with some of the stuff he says and the way he flips that roster. But he did bring a Heisman. Travis Hunter's from Sewanee, Georgia, Collins Hill. That's where the Falcons train, up there right above Atlanta. He was committed to Florida State, went to Jackson State, then moved. That kid, I don't know what's going on, but you don't see him getting in trouble. You don't see him doing anything. I think it's time people get off these kids' asses because I've got kids. I'm sick of it. Just saying they're not bad kids. And we're seeing some great stories in college football, some incredible stories. My good friend Maury Gaston, in his position with Sigma Nu Fraternity, goes all over the country. We got to start thinking about, it's not just these kids, it's the adults. And as far as the NCAA goes, Doug, and far be it from me because I'm not a lawyer, but my attorney, Jack Turner, Millsaps grad from right there in Jackson, Alabama Law School grad, he says, Rob, all the NCAA has to be concerned with are antitrust laws. It's just how it goes. And Jake, I know you've got just a few minutes, but so it's antitrust, and Doug's right. Do they get an exemption? But the NFL is exciting because of salary caps. And guys like Bobby Beathard are legends because of what they did with the cap. The Patriots, we all know what they did, getting guys in. Jake, add some color to what Doug said and what I said about salary caps, because Jackie Sherrill texts me a lot, and that's what he says we're going to.
Oh, I think it's exactly where we're going to. It's just, how do we get there? I tend to
good point.
Not have a lot of faith that they're going to be able to get it done on Capitol Hill. I don't know that. I mean, there's things that we can't get done on Capitol Hill now that are, worldwide problems, much less college football, regardless of who's in office. I tend to believe that it's going to be the power brokers, ever how this works with Sankey and Petiti. You look at some of the meetings that have already started happening back this fall between the Big Ten and the SEC. Those are meetings that have never happened. Sankey kind of told you without telling you about a year ago. He said, hey, look, we're going to give them every opportunity, and I'm paraphrasing, to get this right. In the event that they don't, we may have to take matters into our own hands. Well, you're starting to see a lot of that talk. Hey, we may have to take it into our own hands. What does that look like? I'm not sure how that breakaway happens, but I think it's definitely something where a salary cap happens. You have a commissioner of college football. You have a players union. It's basically the National Football League. And just what Doug said, or Rob, you might have said it. I mean, could you imagine the NFL? In the NFL today, there's probably a third of roster, guys on rosters that would love to be able to churn out and leave and go somewhere else. They can't. So I think if we can have some contracts with this where they're 2-year deals, 3-year deals or whatever it is, that would slow a lot of this down, of course. And then it would stabilize, the system. But there is no doubt we're going that way. It's just who is going to take us there. And odds are it's probably the guys that have the most money in the Big Ten and the SEC. And
it's to put a little finer point or sort of expand on Jake's excellent point there. Eli Drinkwitz, who I like a lot, they didn't have the perfect year that he hoped for, but I don't think they're going away. But Drinkwitz put the dilemma for head football coaches in Power 4, really all of them, but especially Power 4, where they've got the cash to throw around. He said, we were all trained and planned our careers and our strategy about roster management and developing a team so that every 2, 3, maybe every 4 years at some programs, you can really make noise because you've built that quality depth and brought in a few difference makers. That was our mindset. When I signed this freshman, I can't wait to see him as a junior. He said, now that's out the window. You're going to fail if you still view the world that way. He said, now what we have is every 6 months free agency. Think about it. And luckily for us, it's not in the middle of the season. We could have a Georgia Tech rivalry, and some multi-billionaire Georgia Tech grad decides to buy Carson Beck for $8 million 3 weeks before that rivalry game. I'm being silly to make a point, but I think everyone I think the SCOTUS, they rule on what you put in front of them. And the SCOTUS was not asked to bring sanity to college football when we could start compensating players without any salary cap. They just ruled on what is the constitutional meaning of a player's name, image, and likeness. And what we're doing, we call it NIL right now. There's nothing NIL about what we're doing. It's all, buying the best evaluated players.
I mean, Jake, I remember being in college, being in the bookstore at Auburn, and we were saying, why can't these guys make money? They're selling jerseys with their names on them. This is not new. We've been there before, and we asked these questions. We also know when we were in college, when we walked by the parking lot of the athletic dorm, there were a lot of nice vehicles. Mm-hmm. And we weren't stupid. But I think Doug hit on the point 110% accurate, right on it. It is pay for play. When you are paying a kid, when Missouri puts a law, their state legislature, that if you are an in-state resident, in-state kid, and you commit to Missouri, you can start receiving income while you're still in high school. That right there is pay for play. What they need to do is have structure and make age-banded and incentive-based trust with this money. And the reality, if you talk to general managers, most of these kids are simply commodities for 15 or 20 handlers, okay? And we know these kinds of people. The word pimp comes to mind, people that just steal. I hate it.
Wouldn't you sign up for that, Rob?
Oh, if I was
run a 4.3.
If I'm 18 years old, I'm all over this stuff. But what I know now, man, if I would have invested and bought NVIDIA when it got down to $1 a share, I mean, before it did the 7 or 10 for 1 split this summer, that's all I'm saying is that these kids, and you know what? If you give them financial literacy classes, I think you'll make a lot of headway. Sit them down with someone like Howard Sprague from the Andy, put a budget together. How about that?
Howard.
How about that? Jake, I know you got to go. Yeah. Andy, mother said I've got to be in before 10. But Jake, let people know how they can follow you. I appreciate you staying long, kind of laid back Christmas schedule. New Year's coming up, and we'll do it again next week. But man, you picked Oregon to win this thing, and they haven't even played yet, but they're still in it.
They're still in it, but man, I'll tell you what, talk about reform, and we'll get it. As I think Doug said, we'll get back to this point next year, and we'll, clamor over this playoff bracket. But Oregon's got the toughest road. I mean, obviously Ohio State. Then if you beat them, congratulations, you likely get Texas and Dallas. And then if you win that, congratulations, you're likely going to play Georgia or Notre Dame. So if they're going to win it, they're going to earn every bit of it.
Yeah, and you're going to play Georgia in Atlanta. How fun is that?
Yeah. If Dan Lanning wins the national title, he has absolutely earned it. Hey, but no, look, I'm on X at Jake Wim. We're actually off air this week. We'll be back on the 3rd. Rob, I'm going to Destin, but I'll be glad to visit with you next week. So let's do that, as we'll be enjoying the college football playoff from Destin, Florida, and hanging out down there when there's not a lot of people down there, which I actually kind of like it. So, hey, but we'll be back on the 3rd. And of course, we're on 3 to 6 every day here in Central Mississippi. The zone1059.com is how you can stream us. ESPN Radio here, 105.9 on the FM dial.
We'll tune into it, Jake. Happy New Year, my friend.
Same to you, Doug. Thank you, Rob.
And Jake, by the way, that's when they shoot all the pictures for the postcards. It's January down on the Gulf Coast. There's nobody there, and the water's like a sheet of glass. Merry Christmas, and be careful.
You guys.
You bet. Doug, hey,
Rob,
really cool.
Before you go on,
yeah,
did y'all have a good Christmas in Park in Arkansas?
Well, in Memphis, man, we went,
Memphis.
Yeah. We bounce back and forth every day. Yes, it was great. And got my mom for her 90th birthday one of those chairs that goes, picture. She was raising hell. I don't want that chair. The minute we put it in, within 2 minutes, she's like, oh. And now she calls us every night right around cocktail time and goes, I just wanted to tell you I love my chair. And she'll call again 2 hours later. Did I tell you how much I love that chair? So it's great Christmas. They're all great, but you know what? I mean, you know this, and we're so blessed, and we raised a lot of money from our friends. We delivered. I think she was able to get over 250 gifts for legitimately needy people, and we took some of them to the houses. And when you see these people, the look on their faces, and it shows that somebody cares about them. That's what Christmas is all about. It's just an incredible. I love this time of year.
Fantastic. And, in my case, and everybody's Christmas is unique, and what hopefully one thing or the other made it special for everyone. Can be a stressful time of year for a lot of people.
Yes.
But for me now, what's just injected so much fun back into it is having little Jack and Henry, year and a half old baby boys that can say ho, ho, ho now, and they get it. And I think what I'm not sure they get is this doesn't happen every day. You're going to have a drought on toys from Santa for a little while, boys.
Yeah, my daughter Hallie's son Alexander, we took him to Zoo Lights. The Memphis Zoo is just, it's unbelievable. And it was Monday night, and most of the animals were inside. They even the polar bears, but it is fun. It's so much fun. Let me say something about one of our sponsors, Winter Timber Outdoors. I was at another sporting goods store yesterday, and I didn't buy anything. And I didn't because in order to be served, I had to enter into a kiosk. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Hey, folks, you want something? You want to buy it right now? Winter Timber Outdoors in Athens, Alabama. Kenny Winter, Dylan Monroe. It started back in Orange Beach, over a decade ago with St. Nick's Knives. Now it's Winter Timber Outdoors. They're going to grow all over the footprint of the Southeastern Conference. Got a new store under construction in Auburn, but should be open by June, maybe earlier. And they're going to hit all these SEC towns that they can. They're going to grow all the shooting sports, shotguns, rifles, handguns, deer stands, all the food for your food plots, anything that you need gear-wise, Sitka, Dixie decoys. They've got it all in their stores, and they got a staff that's ready to help you. Folks, 12 days of Christmas are upon us, And you see that winter timber, Rete Masimara GPS BOGO, buy one, get one free. Take a picture of that QR code and call the good folks and let them know and visit there. It's easy to get to in Athens. Proud to have them. And Brad Bellamy should be joining us here in just a few minutes from Landers Ford. I'll say this. They are the number one Ford dealership in the Mid-South for a lot of reasons, but it's the great people out there. It's amazing the number of people after shows will call me and say, hey, who's the guy you said to talk to? I saw it on your show, but I was driving. Brad Bellamy, the general manager. And also, a lot of you know Kenny Myers. Kenny Myers is like Wally Cleaver. Great athlete, one of the most popular guys in high school, who's still one of the nicest people and best people you'll meet. Great family. Kenny Myers is now over at Landers Ford. LandersFordMemphis.com. Open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Great service department. They'll pick you up and provide transportation so you don't have to bum a ride from somebody. And if you didn't buy your last vehicle from Landers, they say you probably paid too much. Doug?
Hey, Rob, I can't wait to have Brad on. He's proven his mettle.
Yeah.
He's got some chops breaking down football games. And I'm real interested because he follows Alabama closely more than I. I mean, you got to commit. If you commit your time to knowing something about every college football team, by definition, you will have a superficial knowledge of all of them. Yeah. And so I can't follow Alabama at that level of depth. But I'm curious, or in all of these bowl games of teams with good helmet logos, which ones want to be there? I know they enjoy the getaway and all that, but which teams really prepare, and not just their coaching staff? You can count on the coaches, but which teams they're 2 and 3 deep really want to add a win? And I think for Alabama, it means something to log a win in the history books against a logo like the Michigan Wolverines. So I think that should be a fun game to watch on New Year's Eve.
Well, I mean, that's what college football is. It's about the laundry, that logo fever. You look at a schedule in the summer and you start going, oh my God, look who all we got to play. And that's what I talked about with Florida, was everybody got logo fever. And they looked at those last 5 games on the schedule. And I said, I bet they win 2 or 3 of them. And they won 3 of them. Nobody foresaw Florida State being the train wreck that they became in the 2024 season. But getting wins at home over LSU and Ole Miss, 2 teams that most people thought would be in the playoffs. Doug, I will say this. One problem that we have is the hype train, the group think. Kid comes out in his first game and has a big game. Oh, he'll be in the league in 3. Or the other one is, they're a playoff team.
And Rob,
thought Southern Cal was,
let me interject to help your point. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah.
But the one that's driving me crazy is pundits and even fans write the book on a player, especially quarterbacks, after just a few games. I think that's true of Jackson Arnold. I'm not saying he'll light it up at Auburn, but I think people that are assuming that a 5-star coming out of high school like that is just suddenly a woeful talent, that's premature. It might prove out, they may be proven right, but I wish fans would have a little longer, little more patience with these kids. Give them at least 2 years to show what they can do.
Doug, to add further credibility to your point, look at Joe Burrow from Athens, Ohio, buried in the depth chart at Ohio State.
No stats at all.
And comes to LSU in 2018 and is a 54% passer. And the next year, the LSU team won 7 games against top 10 or 12 ranked teams, and he was a 78.6% passer, won the Heisman Trophy, and was a number 1 pick in the draft. So, look, you've got to think about, in the case of Jackson Arnold, he grew up in Atlanta, and then they moved after his sophomore year to Texas, to the Metroplex area. Too bad Ken's not on to reaffirm the Metroplex. I love that when we always say it. But he played 2 years there. He was the number 4 ranked quarterback in America coming out of high school, the number 10 overall player. and the highest ranked offensive player ever signed by Oklahoma. And they've signed some damn good ones. All 5 starting offensive linemen hit the portal. 6 wide receivers get hurt. They thought so highly of Jackson Arnold. Oklahoma let Dylan Gabriel go to Oregon. Now, he wanted to be closer to home, whatever. Well, he spent time in Orlando. He spent time in Norman. It wasn't it. They just said, okay, if you want to go, go. And Oregon paid him a lot of money. And maybe he doesn't get great grades from NFL scouts, so he took the money. But Jackson Arnold is the guy. He's like buying a Ferrari or a Mercedes, or a great vehicle like a King Ranch F-150 that hadn't been driven in a while. But you take it to the service department, you get a tune-up at Landers, and Brad looks under the hood and says, all right, there you go. But the great players, sometimes just a change of venue is the best thing in the world for them. So it's certainly Joe Burrow is the poster child for that. There was almost nothing to portend from his year at Ohio State. There just weren't any there was no body of work to look at. Somebody knew what his capability was and brought him. Maybe, I don't know if it was Ensminger or not Joe Burrow, the co-OC passing game coordinator. Joe Brady.
Thank you. But my goodness, it was a perfect storm, and it helped to have those wide receivers, an offensive line that could give him time. And so I think that's what Jackson Arnold's best friend, if he can do some things. Nobody's expecting him to be contending to go to New York City for the Heisman. But if you get bring in the best offensive tackle out of the portal, Xavier Chaplin, and make him comfortable with protecting those edges, which Thorne rarely had. Yeah, and I don't think Thorne was ever going to be elite anyway. That's what we want to see how it shakes out. Brad, I hope your ears were burning. I was bragging about the chops you've got breaking down these football games, and I don't want to steal Rob's his host job, but I am curious right out of the gate to hear what you think. Will both Bama and Michigan be excited to play each other, as I think they will because of those 2 logos?
Yeah, I like that question.
Yeah, right. I will tell you, I think transfer portal bowl season is about as difficult as it has ever been to try and break down any type of football game. I mean, trying to figure out who's going to play, who's not going to play, and if a team's going to care or not about a game. I mean, the last time Alabama played in a non-important playoff game or a bowl game, it was against Michigan, and they destroyed them. And then that was I think that was, 4 or 5 years ago. So I have no idea. I mean, that's my intelligent breakdown of this game.
Well, are there things you know about? Are there any players that have, which I respect, it's their life, their career, their physical well-being. Are there any players that have said, I tweaked my hamstring, I'm sitting out, or that dynamic that you know of?
I have nothing. I know nothing. I will tell you that I think I think that I would love to say that Alabama is going to play for something and realize that, hey, we can't end this season with a loss after the year we've had, and we have something to prove and show all these guys that, hey, the SEC is better than the Big Ten, and we're going to come in and we're going to play well, and we're going to show, a underwhelming Michigan team all season. I mean, if they don't beat Ohio State, I feel like this is completely. Of course, they wouldn't play in this game if they didn't beat Ohio State. But I mean, I think Alabama is more talented. I think that, I mean, is what's the status? I mean, is Milroe playing healthy? Everything. I mean, Rob, have you heard anything about any guys sitting out of this game? Because I really have not been. I've not paid much attention to it.
I haven't either. But there will be guys that do. But hey, Brad, I want to ask you, since you're on here, LandersFordMemphis.com. This is a question that a lot of people ask me, and it's just a general question. You being 18 years on the corporate side with Ford Motor Company, people say they went through a divorce or they went through a business breakup or something, and their credit got messed up and they're trying to repair it, whatever. Is there hope for them if they want to come out there and buy a vehicle at Landers where you can rebuild your credit? Because there's people that things happen along the way in life, but you got to punch your way out of them.
Yeah, man, there's absolutely hope. There's hope for everyone. The quite frankly, the best thing for someone that's trying to repair their credit, sometimes the best thing to do is have a family member or a spouse or something that's got good credit to come along with them. One of the things I always recommend is if you're planning on buying a vehicle for a young adult, a child, and you are confident that you're not going to hurt your kid's credit, then it makes a lot of sense to put your kid on that deal. And that way they can establish some credit along the way. I was very fortunate that, my parents put me on a credit card when I was 16 years old. And when I tried to get my first cell phone, I had credit because it had been paid off. So, we got some really good banks that we work with to try and get somebody approved. The other thing that right now we have that helps is when you have a situation where you need to put down a little bit more money, or you have a little bit of negative equity. I mean, we got some pretty good discounts and rebates on some different vehicle lines right now. Expedition, we got $13,000 off. So when you think about the fact that you're applying that much, or you can swap some of the negative equity on a deal that you had a few years ago. I mean, we had a lot of folks that have come in the last few months that are on a trade cycle where they bought during COVID. And some of those folks paid a lot more money than, because of where the market dictated at that point in time. And so they got some negative equity situations. And we've been able to put them in some different car deals to make things happen. We got some really good discounts with rebate on Edge. We got up to $11,000 off some Edge. We have, a 0 for 72 right now on Mach-E and Lightning. And so there's some good rebate that goes along with it, especially for folks that work at like FedEx or AutoZone or some different X-Plan partner programs with Ford. Yeah. They get a huge rebate on some of those vehicle lines. So we're here to help do everything we can. And we spend time with everyone trying to get them the best situation. And there are people that we just can't get approved, but we're going to have them do everything we can to work hard for them, and they'll leave here with dignity if they can't get approved. And that's our goal, right? It's
Brad, I'm curious if you can say, what was your 2024? What was your hottest seller at your dealership?
Yeah,
man. The Bronco has been tremendous for us. It's been an absolutely wonderful vehicle.
Fun car.
Different types of options that it's got has been, from the low end to the high end with the Sasquatch package and Wild Track. The flexibility you have between the hard top and the soft top. I had a customer out here that works with the golf tournament last Saturday. He's a Jeep guy, always been a Jeep guy, and they came out here to buy something else, and they were looking at maybe getting him a Bronco too. And they took a test drive on the Bronco, and he's like, I can't believe I love it this much. I cannot believe how well this thing drives. Like, you told me on the phone, it's a different driving experience. And it is. I mean, it drives so much smoother, so much better. The suspension it's unbelievable how well that Bronco operates. My wife's had two of them. And the last few weeks, we've seen a really big influx of EVs, and the Mach-E and the Lightning, we've sold a good number so far this month. And a lot of that is you got some tax incentives that are about to change. So if you're interested in one of those, you should come in now to take advantage of that. Like, we have one plug-in hybrid Escape left. The $3,750 rebate from the government goes away January 1. So there are some changes that are about to happen in the marketplace.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know people that are coming out there to see you, and they're like, that guy's legit. They like you. And they also, I get a lot of people, they're afraid to comment on the show. They text me and they say, I will go see Brad Bellamy. I'm in the market. And they go out there, and they know Kenny Myers. Kenny's Wally Cleaver, man. He's a great athlete. I remember him in high school. We looked up to, he was a little bit older than me. And that's the cool place. All right, let's get back on it, man. Talking about these playoffs. When you look, Brad, at what we've seen in these first 4 playoff games, we got a 12-team group now. It's going to grow. We know it is 14, 16, 24. It'll be 32. Doug brought up a good point earlier, and he said the death of the dynasty is kind of the theme that Doug hit on this year. I want to give him credit for coming up with that. I think he's on to something. It's called the truth.
Yeah. I mean, we say that, but last week every single favorite that was more of a blue blood absolutely dominated those games. And I think that I'm really surprised kind of at some of the spreads this week. I think Oregon being an underdog in the Rose Bowl. Wow. I mean, they've already beat them. They handled Penn State pretty well. I mean, I know Ohio State's got something to prove, but that to me seems odd. And I would love to see a Boise State rehash of the Oklahoma Statue of Liberty play from the Fiesta Bowl 20 years ago and take down Penn State. But I think I wouldn't say necessarily that I feel like the dynasty is over at this point, or Alabama's dynasty is probably in a rough spot, but I do think that the teams that have the resources are going to continue to be strong year in, year out. And I don't see that changing because there's so much more money at play. Well, what I do think is going to happen is you're going to have a lot more scenarios like we've had this year where upsets come out of nowhere. And that becomes our norm. It becomes every weekend we're seeing 4, 5, 6 teams that should never get beat because there's a lot of talent to go around now that some of these schools would not have been able to get before. So, I mean, and right as I was getting on the show, you're talking about, the transfers and some of the success. I mean, Joe Burrow is a great example. So is Jalen Hurts. I mean, he left Alabama, went to Oklahoma, and I think he dramatically helped his draft status. He showed that he could kind of do more than he was able to do at Alabama. And he's become one heck of an NFL player. And I don't know if that happens if he doesn't have that year at Oklahoma.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Lincoln Riley, that's one thing he can do is coach a quarterback.
Brad, I think you made great points that it may be premature to say that we won't have it. Let's say it could be Georgia or Alabama again. I mean, Alabama fans aren't feeling upbeat this year, but that's a mirage. They're going to always recruit at a high level. So I think you can. I guess what I mean is I think that the quality control of having an elite second, even sometimes Bama had an elite third string compared to a lot of teams, that's out the window because as Saban has poignantly whined and ranted about, and he's right, that you can't build a team relying, you need quality depth, and who's going to have it? And a perfect example of that, unfortunately, due to injury in an arguably unnecessary SEC championship game, Georgia plays without Carson Beck. And I know that fans were excited about the backup who came in, but it'll be a different challenge to be the starter on that big a stage when you're relatively inexperienced. So Georgia's vulnerable right now. And there'll be teams that we've thought of as having dynasties. Georgia's making a case for that recently, that will be vulnerable. They'll make the playoff, to your point, because they're loading up on talent and they got the money and resources. But I think they will be more vulnerable to an upset than we've seen in a while for the reasons of the portal and every 6 months there's free agency.
Yeah, I mean, like look at Penn State, for example, right? So let's say they beat Boise State, right? But they lose their starting quarterback. Well, their backup just left to go somewhere else. So the depth that they have at the quarterback position is probably not nearly as good as it was before. I don't know a ton about the guy that's in the portal now, but, and we had Rob and I went to a few touchdown clubs here in Memphis, and that was a common theme of the challenges you have of, are we going to recruit and put the money behind kids in high school and try to develop them? Or are you going to put your money behind guys that are immediate impact players that are going to start in your program? And so those, like, just historically, you think about some of these players that came in difficult moments. When Tua came in as a freshman for Jalen Hurts, well, Tua was a highly recruited player. Jalen was not a senior at that point in time. He was a junior. It's possible if we're in the current world we're in right now, Tua would have said, you know what, I didn't get the opportunity I wanted this year. I'm going to go ahead and transfer out. He's not there to come in at halftime in that game against Georgia. Alabama doesn't win the national championship. I mean, that's a reality that didn't exist before when you have some of these highly, highly talented players that have waited for their opportunity all year and said, you know what, I'm about to get $1 million to go somewhere else. I'm going to go ahead and jet now, not get hurt in the game. I'm probably not going to play anyways.
Arch Manning. I mean, Sarkisian, if you believe what you read and hear, has enormous pressure to ensure Arch Manning that he will be seeing the field as a presumptive starter next year. And so if Ewers doesn't, I haven't confirmed. I hear half the crowd says he's going into the draft. Others say he needs to develop more. But somebody, if he doesn't go pro, somebody's going to get a hell of a quarterback from in Quinn Ewers. So it's a wild world we're in.
It is.
Yeah, and you made a good point a minute ago too. It's one thing to come in with all the adrenaline in the big game and show up and play. It's another thing if you have to think about it for 2 weeks. If you guys remember, I mean, when Tua came into that game to replace Jalen Hurts, there was no time for him to think about anything. He just came in, he played, they won. When he had to think about it, the Clemson game, the national championship, very first drive of the game, pick six. That game, Alabama was never in that game when Clemson beat them for the national championship game. And Tua, every single time that he had a big game that he had to think about, he didn't play great. You know, the game where Alabama beat Georgia and Tua started the game, it was Jalen Hurts that came in and won the game for him. So there is, you're exactly right. There's a lot to how much you're thinking about something ahead of it and what kind of player shows up. Notre Dame has looked, I mean, they've looked like one of the best teams in the country. They've dominated every game they've played outside of the game they lost. And I would think I'm probably going to lean towards Notre Dame, which I would have said a month and a half ago when I said anchor down with Navy. But
what's the spread, Brad? Spread in that one?
2. Georgia's favored by 2.
Wow. I would have thought more. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's 3 groups with transfer portal. Lane Kiffin, I'm not going to kiss some kid's ass in 8th and 9th grade for 3 or 4 years to get him here. I'll get the best players in Mississippi, and the kids that want to come here, I'll take them out of high school. Then I'm going to watch them for a couple of years in college, and if I like them, I'll go buy them. That's one way. The second is Kirby Smart. I love my kids. I want to keep my kids. I want to develop my kids. I might take 6 or 7 guys in the portal, but I'm going to be very selective. And then the third level is Dabo Swinney. I don't like the portal. They're my kids, but I talked to a coach that knows Dabo very well this week, and he said Dabo and the Clemson philosophy is, Brad, you know, I know you can hit that portal button and transfer, but it's on me and my staff to develop you. We made a commitment to your mother and father and your family, and we will not fail you. Stick it out, stay here, get your degree, give us every chance to develop you. I'll help you with jobs. I will do whatever I need to do. I want you to be part of it. So there's 3 different groups there, and they all have success. Hell, Clemson still made the playoffs this year. Dabo, look at his record. It's going to be fun to watch. We got to wrap it up, but I'm telling you, Brad, you ain't just the general manager of Landers. You're a pretty damn smart football guy. Doug, off the charts as well. Jake Wimberly, executive producer Brendan Martin. Folks, support all of our sponsors like the good folks at Hewlett Dunn. They're open today. They were closed yesterday. They're reopened today, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Saturday. Get out there on the square in Collierville. They've got so much to choose from. Find them all. We're the greatest country in the history of the world. Merry Christmas. Have a great weekend, everybody, and get out to Landers. Same to you. We'll be back Monday.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shoppe health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.